The year was 2387, and humanity had lived among the stars for almost 200 years. They had met 17 different alien species. They had joined something called the Galactic Concord, a great alliance of peaceful worlds. And everywhere they went, humans were known for one thing above all else. They talked instead of fighting. They made friends instead of enemies. Admiral Catherine Moore was 60 years old. She had silver hair and kind eyes that had seen much of the galaxy. She stood on the bridge of her ship, the Endurance, watching a beautiful green planet spin slowly below. This was the homeworld of the Villani, an ancient species that humanity had been trying to befriend for almost 2 years. "The Villani delegation is ready to meet with you," said her communications officer. A young man named Daniel Perry. He was smiling. Everyone was smiling. Today was supposed to be a good day. Ambassador Victor Huang straightened his formal coat. He was the man who had spent 17 months talking to the Villani, learning their ways, earning their trust. "Today, we sign the trade agreement," he said. "Today we become true partners." Catherine nodded. This was how humanity did things. Patience, respect, understanding. When other species threatened human colonies, humans sent diplomats instead of soldiers. When misunderstandings happened, humans sent teachers instead of weapons. For 187 years, this approach had worked perfectly. Lieutenant Commander Samuel Brooks stood near the tactical station. He was Catherine's oldest friend on the ship, a military man who had trained his whole life for battles that never came. He was watching his screens with a worried expression. "Is something wrong, Sam?" Catherine asked quietly. "Maybe nothing," he said. "But 3 Villani warships just moved to the other side of the planet. I cannot see them anymore. It's probably just their normal security procedures." Probably, but he did not sound convinced. Catherine trusted Sam's instincts. He had a gift for sensing danger. She sometimes felt sorry for him. He was a warrior, born in an age of peace, a soldier who had never fought a real battle. Far away on Earth, the Global Unity Council was meeting in a great hall. Secretary General Maria Santos stood before representatives from every nation. She was a small woman with a strong voice and an even stronger will. "The Villani Agreement will open new opportunities for trade and science," she announced. Ambassador Huang reports that the signing ceremony will happen within the hour. A man named Peter Goldman raised his hand. He represented the North American Union, and his face was serious. "What about the Korvax situation?" The room went quiet. The Korvax were a mystery that had appeared 6 months ago at the edge of explored space. They had destroyed a human research station without warning, without explanation, without mercy. 47 scientists had died that day. And since then, the Korvax had refused to respond to any attempt at communication. "We continue trying to reach them," Maria said carefully. "We have sent messages of peace in every language we know. We have offered to meet them anywhere they choose. We have sent gifts and examples of our art and music, and they have answered none of it," Peter said. "Not yet. But every species we have ever met has eventually learned that humanity means no harm. The Korvax will be no different. We simply need more patience." Back on the Endurance, Catherine watched Victor's shuttle descend toward the Villani capital city. She felt hopeful. This was what humanity did best. Building bridges between worlds. Finding the things that made different species similar instead of different. Then her console made an urgent sound. A message was coming from Earth, marked with the highest priority. "Admiral Moore," said the voice from Fleet Command. "We are receiving reports of Korvax ships entering the Tau Ceti system. They have already destroyed the orbital stations. They are moving toward the colony." Catherine felt her heart turn cold. Tau Ceti was one of humanity's oldest and largest colonies. 3 million people lived there. "How long until they reach the population centers?" she asked. "For hours, Admiral. We are sending every ship we can, but you are the closest." Catherine looked at Samuel. He was already entering jump coordinates into the navigation computer. His face was grim but ready. The ceremony, Catherine began. "We'll have to wait," Samuel said. "If we leave now, we can reach Tau Ceti in 90 minutes. Catherine made the hardest decision of her life. She called Victor back to the ship and set course for Tau Ceti at maximum speed. As the Endurance jumped into hyperspace, she sent an apology to the Villani, explaining why she had to leave so suddenly. The Villani responded with understanding and sympathy. They wished her luck and said the ceremony could wait. During the 90-minute journey, Catherine tried again and again to contact the Korvax. She sent messages of peace. She asked what humanity had done to offend them. She offered whatever they wanted if they would just stop and talk. The Korvax did not answer. They never answered. Samuel stood beside her on the bridge, watching the stars streak past outside the windows. "What do we do when we get there?" he asked quietly. "We try to talk to them again. We try to make them understand that we mean no harm. And if they do not listen..." Catherine was silent for a long moment. The Endurance was a diplomatic ship. She had weapons, but she was not built for war. The report said there were dozens of Korvax ships at Tau Ceti. "Then we do whatever we can to save as many people as possible," she finally said. Samuel nodded slowly. "I have been preparing for something like this my whole career. Running simulations. Studying tactics. Part of me always hoped it would never be needed. And now I am glad I was ready." On Earth, people were just beginning to hear the news. The Korvax had come again. They were attacking the largest human colony outside the solar system. Emergency broadcasts interrupted normal programming. Families gathered around their screens, watching in horror as reports came in. In homes across the planet, people felt something they had not felt in generations. Fear. Real fear. The kind that came from knowing that something was out there in the darkness of space. Something that wanted to hurt them. And all their patience and kindness and good intentions might not be enough to stop it. Children asked their parents why the aliens were attacking. Parents did not have answers. For 2 centuries, they had taught their children that the universe was full of friends waiting to be made. Now they were learning that the universe also held enemies. Enemies that did not want to talk. Enemies that did not want peace. Enemies that simply wanted to kill. The Endurance raced through hyperspace, carrying Catherine and her crew toward a battle none of them had ever expected to fight. And somewhere in the cold darkness between stars, Catherine Moore began to realize that everything she had believed about the universe might be about to change. She had spent her whole life as a diplomat, a peacemaker, a builder of bridges. She was about to learn what it meant to be something else entirely. The Endurance dropped out of hyperspace, and Catherine Moore saw hell, where the orbital stations had floated just hours before. There was now only twisted metal and debris. Bodies drifted in the cold vacuum of space, frozen in death. The colony's defensive systems were already destroyed, broken apart in minutes by weapons that humanity had never seen before, and descending through the atmosphere of Tau Ceti. She could see dozens of Korvax landing craft, heading straight for the cities where 3 million people lived.
"Admiral?"
"We are receiving distress calls from the surface," Daniel Perry said. His voice was shaking. His face was pale. He was young, and he had never seen anything like this. "They are begging for help. They are saying the Korvax are already in the streets." Catherine stared at the tactical display. Her ship was built for diplomacy, not war. She had weapons, yes, but nothing compared to the Korvax fleet. She counted the enemy ships. 12 to 1. Those were the odds against her. "Open a channel to the Korvax fleet," she ordered. "Channel open, Admiral. Korvax vessels. This is Admiral Catherine Moore of the Earth Starship Endurance. We do not want to fight. Please respond so that we can talk and find a peaceful solution to whatever has caused this conflict." Nothing. Just silence. "Repeat the message on all frequencies." Daniel did as he was told. Still nothing. The Korvax ships continued their descent as if she had not spoken at all. Admiral Samuel said quietly, standing beside her, "They are not going to answer. They have never answered." "Then we try something different. Broadcast images of human families. Show them pictures of our children. Play them our music. Let them see who we are." The broadcast went out, carrying everything beautiful about humanity across the void. Pictures of parents holding babies, children playing in parks, Artists creating paintings. Musicians playing instruments. All the things that made humans human. The Korbaks ignored it all, Admiral Daniel said, his voice breaking now. We are receiving video from the surface. From New Helsinki. The bridge crew watched their screens. What they saw would stay with them forever. Korbak soldiers moved through the streets of the city. They were tall, covered in black and red armor, their faces hidden behind masks that showed no expression. And they were killing everyone. Not capturing. Not questioning. Just killing. Men running for shelter were shot down. Women trying to protect their children were shot down. The children themselves were shot down. There was no purpose that Catherine could understand. No demands. No attempt to take prisoners or Estiblis. Control. Just death. Systematic, efficient, meaningless death. Catherine felt something change inside her. It was like a door closing. A door she had kept open her whole life. A door that led to a room full of hope and belief in the basic goodness of all living things. That door closed, and something else opened. All hands to battle stations, she heard herself say. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Samuel looked at her with surprise. And something else. Something that might have been respect, Admiral. We cannot save everyone, but we can save some. Bring all weapons online. Target their landing craft. If they want to kill my people, they are going to pay for every single life they take. The Endurance dove into the atmosphere like a bird of prey. Her weapons fired before the Korbaks knew she was there. 3 landing craft exploded in balls of fire and falling metal. A 4th managed to return fire, hitting the Endurance's shields hard. Shields at 60%, reported Lieutenant Grace Chen from the helm. Evasive maneuvers. Samuel, target their engines. I want to force them down away from the city. For 3 hours, the Endurance fought alone. 1 ship against an army? Catherine pushed her vessel to its limits and beyond. They destroyed 11 landing craft. They damaged 7 more. They bought precious time for evacuation shuttles to lift off from the planet's surface, carrying 20,000 civilians to emergency shelters in the mountains. But they could not stop the Korbaks, who were already on the ground. They could only watch as the death toll climbed higher and higher when reinforcements finally arrived. Led by Admiral Howard Price on the carrier Vanguard, the Endurance was barely holding together. Her hull was covered in burns and holes. Her weapons were nearly empty. Her crew was exhausted beyond measure, and on the surface of Tau Ceti, 2,800,000 people were dead. Catherine sat alone in her ready room after the battle. She did not move. She did not speak. Samuel brought her coffee, but she did not drink it. You saved 20,000 lives today, he said. I failed almost 3 million. You did everything any person could do, more than anyone could have expected. She looked up at him, and he saw that her eyes had changed. They had aged. They had hardened. They had seen too much. Our way was not enough, she said. Talking was not enough. Being peaceful was not enough. They came to kill us, and we had almost nothing to fight back with. No, Samuel agreed softly. It was not enough. On Earth, the news spread faster than thought itself. The largest loss of human life in 200 years. Almost 3 million dead. An enemy that would not talk, would not negotiate, would not explain. People gathered in the streets, not to protest, but to mourn. They held candles and pictures of loved ones who had lived on Tau Ceti. They hugged strangers and cried together. Secretary General Maria Santos called an emergency meeting of the Global Unity Council. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with grief. We have tried everything we know how to try. We have offered peace. We have offered friendship. We have offered understanding. The Korbaks have answered with genocide. They have killed our people like animals in a slaughter. They have shown us what they are. She paused, and every person in that great hall felt the weight of what was coming. We have no choice but to consider a different path. A path we abandoned 2 centuries ago. A path we hoped we would never have to walk again. Peter Goldman stood. His face was as serious as death itself. Madam Secretary, I move that we authorize military action against the Korvax Dominion. The vote was called. Every representative raised their hand in favor. For the first time in 187 years, humanity was going to war. In homes across Earth and the colonies, people watched the announcement. Many of them had never known conflict. They had grown up believing that humanity had evolved beyond violence, that they were too civilized to fight. Now they were learning the truth. The capacity for violence had never left them. It had only been sleeping, waiting, hoping it would never be needed again. The Korvax had woken it up, and deep in the hearts of billions of humans, something ancient and terrible began to stir. An instinct older than civilization, older than language, older than memory itself. The instinct to protect their own, no matter the cost, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. In a place that did not exist on any public map, General Marcus Webb opened files that had been sealed for generations. He was 61 years old, a military man who had spent his entire life training for wars that never came. Like Samuel Brooks, he had accepted long ago that his job was mostly ceremonial, a reminder of the violent past that humanity had supposedly left behind. He had been wrong. They had all been wrong. Around him sat the most important military leaders on Earth, including Admiral Catherine Moore. She had come straight from the hospital, her arm still in a bandage from wounds she received at Tau Ceti. She had refused to stay in bed while her species prepared for war. What you are about to see is called the Prometheus Protocols, Marcus explained. They were created in secret after humanity first made contact with alien life. Our leaders hoped we would never need them, but they were wise enough to prepare for the worst. He activated a holographic display, and shapes began to form in the air above the table. Ship designs, weapon systems, battle strategies, things that humanity had never built, never used, never even admitted existed. For 200 years, we have shown the galaxy a certain face: peaceful explorers, friendly traders, patient diplomats. That was real. That was who we chose to be. But we never forgot who we were before. We never lost the knowledge of how to fight. Admiral Howard Price, who had led the relief force to Tau Ceti, leaned forward to study the designs. These ships are massive, nothing like what we have now. The Nemesis-class dreadnought, Marcus said. 3 times larger than our biggest current warship. Weapons powerful enough to crack open a planet. We have complete blueprints, and we have the factories to build them. The first one can be ready in 6 months? 6 months is a long time, Catherine said quietly. The Korvax could attack a dozen more colonies before then. Which is why we are not waiting, Marcus replied. Starting today, every ship we have will be upgraded with new weapons. Every factory that can make military equipment will be converted. Every citizen who received basic military training will be called back to service. He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. The Korvax believe we are weak because we chose peace. They are about to learn how wrong they are. In the weeks that followed, humanity transformed itself. Recruiting stations opened in every city on Earth and every colony world. The response was beyond anything the military planners had expected. Young people who had never known war lined up by the millions. They were not bloodthirsty or eager for violence. They were scared and angry and determined. They had seen what happened at Tau Ceti. They had watched the videos of Korvax soldiers murdering civilians in the streets, and they had decided that they would not let it happen again. Among the volunteers was a young woman named Nicole Roberts. She was 22 years old, a graduate student who had spent her life studying alien species. She had dreamed of peaceful exploration, of learning about strange new worlds and the creatures that lived on them. Her younger brother had been a teacher on Tau Ceti. He had worked at a school in New Helsinki, teaching children about Earth's history and culture. His body was never found. I spent my whole life trying to understand other species, Nicole told the recruiting officer. I wanted to appreciate them, to find what made them beautiful and unique. Then one of them murdered my brother for no reason anyone can explain. Now I need to understand why. And if there is no reason, I need to make sure they can never do it again. Across the galaxy, the other species of the Galactic Concord watched humanity's transformation with growing concern. They had known humans as gentle souls, more interested in art and science than weapons and war. The Villani ambassador, whose trade ceremony had been interrupted by the Tau Ceti massacre, sent a report to his government. "I have studied humans for 30 years," he wrote. "I thought I understood them completely. They were patient beyond measure, forgiving to a fault, always looking for common ground with even their most difficult neighbors. But now I see something in them that I never noticed before, something their enemies should fear greatly." "What is it?" asked the Villani High Minister. "They call it resolve. When humans commit themselves to something, they pursue it with an intensity that is almost frightening. For 2 centuries, they committed themselves to peace. They threw all their passion and creativity and stubborn determination into building a better universe. Now they have committed themselves to war, and I believe the Korvax have no idea what is coming for them on Mars." The great shipyards that had built exploration vessels and trade ships began building something very different. The skeleton of the first Nemesis-class dreadnought rose slowly against the red sky. Growing larger every day, they named it Reckoning. Catherine Moore visited the shipyards often, watching her new flagship take shape. Samuel Brooks usually accompanied her. Neither of them spoke much during these visits. There was not much to say. One evening, as the sun set over the Martian mountains, Catherine finally broke the silence. "I keep thinking about what I could have done differently at Tau Ceti," she said. "If I had been faster, if I had been better prepared, if I had not wasted time trying to talk to creatures who would never listen." "You followed our principles," Samuel said. "You gave them every chance. And almost 3 million people died for our principles." She shook her head slowly. "I am not saying we were wrong to try for peace, but we were wrong to believe that peace was the only answer. We were wrong to think that everyone in the universe would respond to kindness with kindness. So what do we do now?" Catherine looked at the Reckoning, its massive frame catching the last light of day. "We learn a new lesson. We remember that peace is a choice, not a guarantee. And we make sure that when we offer the hand of friendship, the other hand holds a weapon. Not because we want to fight, but because some enemies will not stop until they are forced to stop." Samuel nodded slowly. The people who created the Prometheus protocols understood that. They did. They hoped we would never need their work, but they knew that hope is not a strategy. They planned for the worst while working for the best. We forgot that wisdom. The Korvax reminded us of it. In the darkness of space, Korvax scout ships continued to probe the edges of human territory. They found new defenses being built. They detected increased military activity around every colony. They reported back to their masters that the prey was behaving strangely. The Korvax leaders were not concerned. They had crushed dozens of species before. The pattern was always the same. First came resistance, then desperation, then surrender, then extinction. Humans were simply in the resistance phase. Soon they would move to desperation. Then they would break. Like everyone else had broken, the Korvax had never met a species that did not break. But they had also never met humans at war, in training camps, across human space. Soldiers practiced with weapons their grandparents had never seen. Pilots learned combat maneuvers that had only existed in simulations. Engineers tested new systems designed to turn every ship into a fortress. And in quiet moments, when the training was done and the lights were low, they thought about the people they had lost. The friends and family who had died on Tau Ceti, the future that had been stolen from them. They were not fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting because something precious had been taken from them, something irreplaceable. And though they knew they could never get it back, they could make sure it was never taken again. The reckoning grew larger every day, and with it grew something else. Something that humanity had kept locked away for 2 centuries, the other side of themselves. The side that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars beyond counting. The side that had clawed its way up from the mud of Earth. To reach the stars, the side that did not know how to give up. 18 months after the massacre at Tau Ceti, The Human Defense Force launched Operation Thunderstrike. Admiral Catherine Moore stood on the bridge of the reckoning, surrounded by the most powerful fleet humanity had ever assembled. 47 warships filled the space around her, including 3 Nemesis-class dreadnoughts. Each ship was crewed by men and women who had trained harder than any generation before them. Each one carried weapons that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors. Captain Nicole Roberts, who had risen from raw recruit to intelligence officer in just 18 months, stood at her station nearby. She had spent the past year studying everything humanity knew about the Korbaks, their biology, their society, their psychology. She had become one of the most valuable minds in the fleet, Report Catherine said. Nicole pulled up a holographic map showing a distant star system. We have located their home world, Admiral. Korvax Prime in the Sigma Draconis system. Population estimated at 12 billion. Heavy orbital defenses, but our simulations suggest we can break through, and their fleet. Scattered across their conquered territories, they do not expect us to strike at their home. If we move fast enough, we can reach Korvax Prime before they can gather their forces to defend it. Captain Samuel Brooks, now commanding the Dreadnought Judgment, spoke over the fleet communication channel. Admiral, are we really going to do this? Attack their homeworld? Their civilian population? Catherine's face showed no emotion, but her eyes were thoughtful. No, Sam. We are going to give them one more chance. She nodded to Daniel Perry, who now served as her communications commander. Open a channel. Maximum power, all frequencies. I want every Korvax in their system to hear what I am about to say. Channel open, Admiral. Catherine took a deep breath. She had rehearsed these words in her mind 1,000 times. Now she spoke them aloud, and they would be remembered forever. People of the Korvax Dominion, I am Admiral Catherine Moore of the Human Defense Force. For 2 years, we have tried to reach you. We have offered peace. We have offered friendship. We have offered understanding. You have answered us with silence and slaughter. We do not know why you attacked us. We do not know what we did to offend you. We do not understand what you hope to achieve. But we know this. You have killed almost 5 million human beings. You have attacked our colonies, murdered our children, and refused every attempt at communication. So let me communicate clearly now. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Surrender unconditionally within 24 hours. Open negotiations for a permanent peace, and we will show you the same mercy we have shown every species we have ever met. Continue your aggression, and we will demonstrate capabilities we have kept hidden for 2 centuries. We tried peace. Now, you will meet the other side of humanity. You have 24 hours. Choose wisely. The message ended. The fleet waited. Every person on every ship held their breath. For the first time in 2 years, the Korvax responded. A single transmission came through, rough and broken, but clear enough to understand. They had learned human language by listening to all the messages humanity had sent them. Now they finally chose to speak. You are prey. Prey does not threaten. Prey dies. Catherine closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them again, they were as cold as the void between stars. All ships advance. Weapons free as the Battle of Korvax Prime. It lasted 17 hours. The Korvax fought with the ferocity of a species that had never known defeat. Their ships were powerful and numerous. Their warriors were fearless, charging into certain death without hesitation. They had conquered a dozen species and enslaved billions of souls. They knew nothing but victory. But they had never faced humanity at war. The Nemesis class dreadnoughts tore through their orbital defenses like fire through paper. Human pilots who had trained on simulations of every possible combat scenario outmaneuvered Korvax fighters 3-1. Human soldiers, fighting with the cold fury of a species that had lost millions of its own, showed no fear and asked for no mercy. The Korvax threw everything they had at the human fleet, wave after wave of ships. Desperate attacks by suicide pilots, weapons designed to crack planets in half. None of it was enough. By the 17th hour, the Korvax fleet was broken. Their orbital defenses were rubble. Their military command centers were craters. The sky above their homeworld belonged to humanity, and Admiral Catherine Moore faced the hardest choice of her life. Admiral Nicole reported, "We have complete control of the orbital space. Our weapons are in position. We could sterilize the planet. End the Korvax threat permanently." Catherine stared at the world below. A blue-green sphere? Not so different from Earth. 12 billion lives. Most of them civilians. Many of them children who had never held a weapon or made a choice to harm anyone. She thought about Tau Ceti. She thought about the children there, gunned down in the streets by Korvax soldiers. She thought about Nicole's brother, who had been a teacher, but only wanted to help young minds grow. She thought about revenge. How easy it would be. How satisfying. How final. Then she thought about who she was, who humanity was, who they had chosen to be for 200 years. "No," she said finally, "we are not them. Target their military installations only. Precision strikes. We end their ability to make war, but we do not commit genocide." Samuel's voice came over the channel, filled with concern. "Catherine, they will not stop. You know they will not stop. Their entire culture is built on hunting and killing. Then we will be here every time they try to rebuild. For 100 years, if we have to, for 1,000. We will be the wall they break against, over and over again, until they learn that there are other ways to exist in this universe." The precision strikes took 3 days. Every military base was destroyed. Every weapons factory was reduced to ash. Every warship that tried to rise from the surface was shot down before it could reach space. But the city stood. The farms stood. The schools and hospitals and homes where 12 billion Korvax lived their daily lives stood untouched. When it was over, Catherine broadcast one final message to the shattered world below. "The war is over. You are defeated, but you are not destroyed. This is who we are. We fight to protect, not to annihilate. Remember this when you rebuild. Remember that you could have been our friends. Perhaps someday you still can be. Until then, we will be watching. Always watching. And if you ever raise your weapons against us or any other innocent species again, we will return. And next time, we may not be so merciful." The Human Defense Force withdrew from Korvax space, leaving behind a network of observation satellites and a small garrison to monitor the defeated enemy. They had won the greatest military victory in human history without becoming the monsters they had fought against. Catherine stood alone on the observation deck of the Reckoning, looking out at the stars. Samuel found her there hours later. "You could have ended them," he said quietly. "Many people would say you should have. Many people will call you weak for showing mercy." Catherine turned to face him. Her eyes were tired, but there was something in them that had not been there before Tau Ceti. Strength, certainty, peace. Let them say what they want. "We proved that we could destroy the Korvax if we needed to. Now we have given them a chance to become something better. That is not weakness, Sam. That is the hardest kind of strength there is. And if they do not change, if they rebuild their fleet and attack again, then we will stop them again, and again, and again, as many times as it takes, because that is what it means to be human. We do not give up on anyone, not even our enemies." She looked back at the stars, at the vast and ancient universe that held so many wonders and so many horrors. "We always will. But now the galaxy knows that peace is not our only option. And maybe, just maybe, that knowledge will make peace more possible than ever before." 5 years after the Battle of Korvax Prime, Ambassador Victor Huang sat in a diplomatic chamber far from Earth. He had negotiated with many strange species over his long career, but the being across the table from him today was unlike any he had faced before. It was Korvax. The Korvax representative called himself Vorith. He had been a warrior once, commander in the fleet that attacked Tau Ceti. He had personally led soldiers who had killed thousands of innocent humans. Now he was something his species had never had before in all their long history. "A diplomat," Ambassador Huang Vorith said, his voice rough but carefully controlled. My people wish to understand something. You had the power to destroy us completely. Your weapons were aimed at our cities. Our children were at your mercy. Why did you not end us? Victor smiled. It was the same patient, gentle smile he had worn in 100 negotiations with 12 different species. Some things never changed. Because destruction was never what we wanted, he said. We wanted safety for our people, yes. We wanted to make sure you could never hurt us again. But we also wanted something more. What could be more important than total victory? Peace. Real peace. Not just the absence of fighting, but the presence of understanding. A universe where different species can live alongside each other without fear. Voreth was silent for a long time. His dark eyes studied the human across from him, trying to understand a way of thinking that was completely alien to everything his species had ever known. My people have always seen the universe as a place of competition, he finally said. The strong consume the weak. This is the natural order. This is how it has always been. Nature, perhaps, Victor replied. Among animals who cannot think beyond their next meal. But we are not animals, Voreth. We are thinking beings. We can choose to be more than nature made us. We can choose to build instead of destroy. To cooperate instead of compete. To see other species as potential friends instead of prey. And if we choose otherwise, if we rebuild our forces and attack again, Victor's smile did not change, but something in his eyes shifted. Something hard appeared beneath the gentle surface. Then you will meet us again, and again, and again. We have patience you cannot imagine, Voreth. We waited 200 years for a war we hoped would never come. We can wait 200 more if we must, but we would much rather spend that time as partners than as enemies. On Earth, the Global Unity Council was in session. Secretary General Maria Santos, now gray-haired but still strong after 2 decades of leadership, addressed the assembled representatives. The Korvax peace accords have been signed. For the first time in their history, the Korvax Dominion has agreed to a treaty of non-aggression with another species. They have accepted permanent observers on their worlds. They have agreed to limit their military forces. And most importantly, they have opened their borders to cultural exchange. The chamber erupted in applause. It was not the celebration of a military victory. It was something better. The celebration of a war that had ended before it consumed everything. Peter Goldman, now an old man with white hair but the same sharp mind, raised his hand. And what of our military? Now that the immediate danger has passed, will we return to the way things were before? Maria shook her head. No, we have learned too much to go back. Our military will remain strong. The Prometheus protocols will remain active. We understand now that peace requires strength as well as wisdom. But our soldiers are not conquerors. They are guardians. They protect what we have built and what we will continue to build. In the Mars shipyards, the Reckoning floated in a maintenance dock, her weapons silent but ready. Admiral Catherine Moore walked her corridors one last time before her retirement, her hand trailing along the cold metal walls that had become like a second home to her. Samuel Brooks walked beside her. As he had for 30 years? Any regrets? He asked. Many, she admitted. For every life lost on both sides. For the innocence we gave up when we learned to fight. For the universe that might have been, if the Korvax had been willing to talk instead of kill. She paused. But also gratitude. For the lives we saved. For the future we protected. For the species we managed to remain, even when it would have been so easy to become something worse. What species is that? Catherine stopped at a viewport and looked out at the stars. They seemed brighter somehow than they had when she was young. Or maybe she was just seeing them more clearly now. Human, complicated, contradictory, capable of both tremendous cruelty and tremendous compassion. For 2 centuries, we tried to be only one thing. Pure diplomats. Pure pacifists. But that was a lie we told ourselves. We have always been both the healer and the warrior, the builder and the destroyer. And now we know the truth about ourselves. We can choose peace without being naive. We can wage war without becoming monsters. That balance is not easy. It may be the hardest thing any species can do. but it is what makes us human. On Korvax Prime, in a city that still bore scars from the precision strikes 5 years earlier, a young Korvax child sat in a newly built school. Her teacher was a human woman named Nicole Roberts, who had once sworn to make the Korvax pay for her brother's death. Now she was teaching their children. "You came to destroy us," the young Korvax said. Her voice was curious, not angry or afraid. "We came to stop you from destroying others," Nicole corrected gently. "There is a difference. But you could have killed everyone. Your weapons were aimed at our cities. My mother told me." "Yes, we could have." "Your mother was right to be afraid." Nicole knelt down to look the child in the eyes. "But that would not have fixed anything. It would have made us exactly like the thing we were fighting against. Killers who murder innocent people. Instead, we chose to give your species a chance to learn a different way." The child thought about this for a long moment. "Why?" Nicole smiled. It was the same smile Victor Huang wore in diplomatic chambers. The same smile Catherine Moore wore when she chose mercy over revenge. A human smile, patient and hopeful and stubborn, because that is who we are. Humans. We believe everyone deserves a chance to change. Even enemies. Especially enemies. Your grandparents tried to destroy us. Your parents grew up in a world that hated us. But you are growing up in a world where humans and Korvax learn together. Maybe your children will grow up in a world where we are true friends. And if we are not, if my people decide to fight again, then we will be waiting, and we will stop you. But we will also keep hoping, keep trying, keep believing that someday you will choose peace instead of war. Because that is the most human thing of all. We never give up. Across the galaxy, the other species of the Galactic Concord updated their records on humanity. The old files called them peaceful diplomats, gentle explorers, patient friends. Those files were not deleted, but new information was added. The new files carried a warning. Do not mistake human patience for weakness. Do not confuse their love of peace with an inability to fight. They carry within them the capacity for both incredible kindness and terrible violence. For 2 centuries, they chose to show only kindness. Now the galaxy has seen both faces. There was an image attached to the warning. It showed the human fleet emerging from hyperspace above Korvax Prime. Weapons blazing, unstoppable and terrible. Below it was another image. Admiral Catherine Moore, shaking hands with the Korvax diplomat Vorith at the signing of the peace accords. Both of them were smiling, 2 faces of humanity. Both completely genuine, both equally eternal. At the bottom of the file, someone had added a final note. They tried peace first. They always will. But now the universe knows what happens when peace is not enough. Remember this. Respect them. In whatever you do, do not threaten what they love. The stars continued to turn, ancient and indifferent. But among them, a young species had found its place. They had learned who they truly were. They had faced the darkness within themselves and chosen to be something better. They were human, and the universe would never forget what that meant.